What's good, DWA fam? This is Jared. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Done With Adulting Pod.
Hey y'all, and if you're new here, welcome to the family. My name is Asia.
My name is Jared, and thank you for listening to
Done with Adulting Podcast. We are really glad you're here because we're talking all things we have to do as adults that no one warned us about during the many years we were in school.
Yes, we also discuss pop culture, current events, and give our perspective on hot topic issues in our society. And even though we're best friends, we don't always agree.
Basically, we're millennials. We get it. Adulting is hard. Welcome to your safe space.
We hope you enjoy. We are back with another week of Done With Adulting Podcast. We appreciate you all for rocking with us for yet another week. For today's episode, we will actually be dropping a re-release from a podcast that I was on a few weeks ago called Real Effin' Talk. For people who are new here, I don't actually curse, so just use your imagination for what the effin' is. Asia and I, we met Brenna, who hosts Real Effin' Talk in the Almost 30 Accelerator program that we speak very highly about. She's a dope person and also is a full-time therapist, so this episode was very therapeutic. She just tries to get me to open up, and we discuss my personal journey through life. And we also dive into my different outlooks into the world and today's society. It was a fun conversation with a great person, so we definitely hope you enjoy. Make sure y'all follow Brenna on Instagram at real.fckn.talk. And you already know where to find us on the socials. Done With Adulting Pod on Insta and Done WTH Adulting on Twitter. Deuces.
Hi guys, we are back with another episode of Real Fucking Talk. I'm chatting with Jareed Gaines. He is a friend I made in the Almost 30 Accelerator program and the host of Done With What? Yes.
It's a great program.
And he's the host of the Done With Adulting podcast. I am having both him and his co-host Asia on Real Fucking Talk, but I wanted to chat with them separately to really focus on each of their individual stories, as I think they're both super interesting and important to share and speak about. So, hey, Jared, thanks for joining me.
No, thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good. So we just chatted like 2 weeks ago on your podcast. I was on your pod.
Yes, it was a great episode. I had so much great feedback. And it's funny because like after we had you on, there were so many people who hit me up just telling me that they actually are in therapy or they're going through therapy and that I should try it and all this other type of stuff, I guess, in regards to the episode. So got a lot of great feedback.
Nice. So for those of you listening, if you have not already listened to the episode that I was on Done With Adulting, go listen to that because we're kind of going to pick up where we left off. So in that episode, Jared,
go check it out.
Yes. In that episode, though, you shared like you've never really been to therapy. You feel like everything you've been through has made you who you are. And, you know, you're able to just process it on your own.
Yeah. So I guess to preface it, my co-host Asia, she loves to say that she thinks every single human should go through therapy. And I kind of fought back on that. Like, I don't know if I actually agree with that because I think I'm a pretty normal person. I mean, obviously, I've been through things in my life that, I mean, I don't think other people have been, but those situations helped me get to where I'm at. So I don't really look at those as negatives. I kind of look at them as positives. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm in a really good space mentally. So I don't really think that therapy would be for me. I'm definitely interested in learning more about therapy and what it could do for me, and not only me, but for other people or what it does for other people. But yeah, for me personally, I don't know. I just don't really think I need it.
Yeah, you know, I totally respect that. And I'm not like one of those therapy pushers who's like, you should go to therapy. Like, I mean, I do agree that like therapy can be really helpful, but it's the same thing with, you know, I don't know, getting the vaccine, which is so prominent right now. Like you can't force someone to do something they don't want to do. So like,
and it's not like I'm even against it. I mean, I definitely would do it. I don't know what it would help me with. So maybe that's something that you can teach me. I mean, as our friendship blossoms and as I listen to your pod a little bit more and just me and Asia talk about therapy more as we do our pod and bring on different guests and things like that. I'm all about learning and all about experiencing new things. So that's something that I'm definitely not opposed to. I just don't know what it would do for me.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Jareed and Jareed's story, to put it simply, Jareed lost his dad when you were what?
Just recently, September.
Okay. Jareed lost his dad in September. Jareed is a Black man living in America right now, which is not easy.
Up in Massachusetts, actually, right outside of Boston.
Right.
And I'm not even from here originally. Originally from southern New Jersey, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. And Jareed is in an interracial relationship. So just basing it off of those three things, like I have to imagine that your central nervous system, especially with the first two that I mentioned, is maybe like a little heightened right now. Like,
Oh yeah.
Did you experience any anxiety during COVID, during the protests? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great first question. So yeah, while we're in lockdown with the whole George Floyd incident, and I guess the reemergence of Black Lives Matter, for me, like me and Asia, we actually had a episode on this, and it's actually one of our highest listened to episodes. But to me, it was just like a normal thing. Like this happens all the time. Growing up, I've seen this multiple times, and I'm kind of just like desensitized to it now when you see people who look like you going through certain things. And that's just something that's in the back of my mind all the time. So for example, me going out for a run in my neighborhood, every time I step out the door, I think, what happens if I don't make it back? Or what happens if I come into an interaction with somebody who doesn't think that I belong in this neighborhood, or I shouldn't be running along their street? That's something that just happens to me like subconsciously in the back of my mind. And even driving down the street, going around the corner, those are things that are always in the back of my mind. Just like, what if I get stopped by? What if I get pulled over by the police and I'm acting respectful, but they just are having a bad day and want to treat me different? So right now I'm 30. Over my lifetime, that's happened to me, like I said, probably every day as I leave the house and as I'm going somewhere. So it's kind of just like in my system. It's in the back of my mind subconsciously. And that's something that is just normal in my life.
See, that desensitization and those thoughts that you have, you said it every day. Great reason to like go to therapy.
Just to talk about and get off your chest, something like that.
Yeah. Like the fact that you're desensitized to like such a huge deal like that. I don't know, but to you, it doesn't feel wrong or it doesn't feel bad.
To me, it's normal. It's like something that's needed for me to just make sure that I'm on my P's and Q's a little bit. Yeah, to survive. So
yeah,
I know I'm not the only one. A bunch of my friends, we talk about this all the time. Even like I went to a college called Stonehill. It was like maybe 2% Black people, and all the Black people that were there, or all the minorities were there, were basically athletes. Mm-hmm. So you just have those conversations being in the dorm rooms and just seeing, I mean, you're around people who you're familiar with. But just growing up in that environment is something that's always in the back of your mind. And like I said, to me, now at 30, it's just normal. It's a part of the everyday life just to survive. So,
yeah. I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your dad and what that loss was like for you. I mean, it's August 2nd, so I assume we're coming up on the almost 1 year mark of.
I believe it was actually September 2nd or September 3rd.
Wow.
Yeah. So this also, I guess this would be a good thing for therapy, because I've shared this on the pod. And usually I don't open up unless people ask me questions. So like even Asia, she thinks like I'm a closed book and I don't share my emotions and things like that. I kind of would have to agree with her, or agree with, not even her, but my wife, like a lot of people who I'm close with say this, but yeah, my dad, he was sick for a while. He actually had kidney disease. So he was on dialysis for a while. He probably got diagnosed with that maybe when I was around 14 or 15. But that was just something that I was always familiar with. He was always on dialysis. I would see him times after he came back from his treatment, and he was just sick and down. And then as September of last year approached, his situation and his health were just deteriorating a little bit more and more. There were actually times in the past months before when he called me and he just sounded terrible, and he would just be giving me information on what to do once he passed and things like that, like where to find certain things, make sure that all the affairs were in order. So to me, the person that I am, I'm always looking at a situation kind of in like the worst way, trying to actually like to prep myself, I guess. So I've actually been prepping myself for his loss for a while. So like you said, you heard us talk about him on the podcast that we did with Chelsea. But I guess I kind of use that as maybe like a defensive mechanism to just make sure that I'm good leading up to the moment when something tragic or something sad actually happens. So I won't actually have to share that emotion or actually grieve. So actually, I don't even I haven't cried since it happened. I don't even think that I've really went through the grieving process. I mean, I think about them here and there. But yeah, just leading up to that situation, there were times when I thought that I was going to lose him previously. So I kind of just built that into, I don't want to say act tough, but I guess kind of give off that feeling.
Yeah. I wonder what it would be like for you to, instead of suppress those feelings or maybe because it seems like what you're doing is compartmentalizing them. There's a filing cabinet in your head and you put it in the file cabinet and you close it and locked it and threw away the key, and it's there if you want to touch it, but you don't have to. I wonder what it would be like for you to really feel those feelings and maybe accept hey, he's gone and this sucks.
Well, no, I think I have done that as well. But again, I guess maybe I'm just so desensitized to it, or I've just been thinking about this for so long that I don't know, the grief and the emotion just isn't really coming. So also when it happened, I had to go, he was in Jersey. So I had to go down there and just handle business. And in that little time frame of, I guess, waiting to get everything settled and making sure that all his services were in line and in order, only thing on my mind was making sure that everything was getting done and the business side of it was getting handled. So I think that also was a way for me to kind of, like you said, compartmentalize it and put it to the back burner, that I wouldn't actually have to think about him being gone, and actually having to grieve or share my emotions.
Something that's coming up for me is, and I don't know if you would know this question. This is such a personal question, but do you think the majority of Black men and women kind of have to desensitize themselves in order to survive, in order to thrive in life?
I do. I believe, because I mean, at a young age, you growing up being Black in America, you're already taught that you're different. And you're already taught from growing up with your family and your older family members of what can happen to you just from you being Black in a certain area or in a certain situation. So, I mean, I remember probably around, obviously the first time I got my license, that's the first talk that you have with your family is what to do when you get pulled over. And I know there's other people in this country who probably never have to have that conversation. But even just being even younger and just going to school and hearing kids or classmates just make jokes or say racially motivated things, you come back home and you're taught at a young age why that's happening and what you have to do to survive and to get through those experiences. So race and culture and things like that, and for Black individuals, that's something that you're taught and learn, and you're taught and you learn when you're extremely, extremely young. Other individuals probably in America, they're not really talking about race and what needs to be done dealing with racism and things like that.
Yeah. And, that was something that I really spent time learning this last year. I have never had to think about my race. I have never had, it's never been an issue for me. So it's never been something that I have to think about. But what I learned is that that's very much not the case for people.
Yeah, for any other people.
Yeah.
And just going back to the whole George Floyd situation, and I guess with the Black Lives Matter reemerging, for some reason, there were just so many people just reaching out to Asia and myself, talking about how they never really looked at it from our side of or our point of view. And they were just naive to it. And me and Asia, we were sitting back like we've been saying this or not just us, but our community has been saying this for so many years. What happened now in 2020 with this George Floyd incident that made people actually realize and want to start being allies? And I think we kind of attributed it to people were actually inside and home. They were actually taking in everything that was happening in the news and things like that, not just living their lives. Because I mean, in COVID, the world stood still for a little bit. Everybody was inside. So we kind of contributed to that, but that was something that we were kind of confused about, how people are just now figuring this out. And our community has been saying it for so long.
Yeah. That I imagine that being so fucking frustrating. Hi, yeah, we've told you guys that this is happening and you chose to ignore it.
And then also to add on to that, people would be asking us what they can do. And we're like, it's not our job to help you not be racist or to be anti-racist. That's that's something that you should want to do for yourself and something that you should want to research and get a better understanding. I can understand you coming to us with a certain amount of questions and where to start, but that's not on us. That's not on the Black community. That's not on Black individuals in America to try to make America not racist, or the individuals in the country not to be racist. But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. I wonder how frustrating it is for you, because I know for me, I find myself getting really heated when I hear, people in my life or even strangers on the internet or whatever talking about how like there's no such thing as like white privilege and all of this, where it's like, I guess for me, I don't understand how someone can't see it. Like,
I'm the same way. I'm like, what do you mean? How can you not understand that? What are you confused about when you hear that word?
Right.
And I think it's just like, people take offense to it because they feel like to me, it kind of seems like when they hear white privilege, it means that they also did not struggle throughout life, or that maybe at one point in life that they were not oppressed. But that's not what that means. That just means that you might have had it a little easier. You might still have a rough life. You still might have struggled in life, but you still had it a little easier just because of your skin color and the things that you were not seeing and you didn't have to go through because of your skin color.
Yeah, I engaged in like a heated argument with a friend a while back. I think it was like right around Breonna Taylor. I want to say it was like right after that. But this friend's, I guess, rebuttal was kind of like, well, how is there white privilege if, people are more likely to get into colleges if they check like Black, Asian, whatever. So, I mean, what would you say to someone who said that to you?
I would say you're using a very small percentage of people, and those policies were put in place to help people like myself and help minorities who don't have the privilege of attending some of these great schools. So they need the extra boost and the extra help. Not only because of their color, but also maybe because of, I guess, their economic background. They might not have the money to do that. So I just don't understand why people are against kind of a level playing field.
Right.
Like, you helping other people isn't taking anything away from you.
Yeah. And that's essentially what I had said. I was like, because if those things weren't in place, it would be primarily just white people. Like,
yeah. And I mean, even with those things in place, it's still primarily white people. So, I mean, I don't know. We're still evolving. I think we are, as a country, going into a better place. And even people like you having those tough conversations with family members, but also with close friends, you're able to show them the things that they're not actually seeing. And you might not be living it, but you're able to share a side that they're not used to. So hopefully that could change their mindset a little bit.
How does it feel for you when you're having a conversation with someone who is just like so not willing to see your side? Because I get really fucking heated, like to the point that I can't engage. Like, I can't do it.
So for me, I don't even like share my energy with those people. Like, if I see the conversation isn't going, like it's not being productive at all, or if you're not even trying to listen to me to see my side, I'm just gonna like halt the communication. We don't even need to have this conversation. Me personally, I can have conversations with people who don't agree with me. Mm-hmm. I think that's like a place within America where we have to improve on a little bit, is having conversations and making decisions with people who we don't necessarily agree with. Right now, everything is just so polarized. So if I know you're on one side of the fence and I'm on the other side, we're not even having a conversation. We can't even make any positive change because we're not even willing to come to the table. So I think that's something that we need to change. And me personally, I'm able to have those conversations with people who I don't totally agree with, because to me, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. As long as you show me respect and you respect the people that I'm around, I think we're able to have those conversations and be fine.
Totally. I think there's such a difference in like mindset and thought surrounding political views or personal values and all of that. I was having a conversation with a family member and we have different political views, and they were saying like, we can talk about it and like, I'll try and change your mind and you'll try and change my mind. And I was like, no, but that's the thing. Like, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. Like,
exactly. And you shouldn't have to do that. Yeah.
Right. And
you shouldn't have to do that. And they shouldn't have to do that.
I respect that you think that, and I'm never going to try and sway you. And they were like, well, that's the whole point. And I was like, no, it's not.
No,
Like,
it's not.
The point isn't to win. The point is to share our perspectives. And like,
and for you to see what side I'm coming from and for me to see what side you're coming from, because even though we have different opinions, I might be able to understand why you think that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just like I also tell my friends this: if I'm ever in like racist people, to me, they don't bother me. I can understand. I can see why some people are racist, things like that. Maybe they went through something in their life. As long as they're treating me and my close people with respect, and they're not trying to be disrespectful or violent towards me or nasty to me in any certain type of way, let them live their lives. If they want to be racist, if they want to be whatever they want to be, if they're not bothering me nonstop, let them be. Do what they need to do. I just won't be around you.
You're a better human than me, because I'm not at that place yet that I can be like, oh, you're racist, but you're not racist to me. Cool.
What is that even to me? It's like the people, like also my family, they're not doing any, like obviously the races like KKK, things like that, I have an issue with. People who are actually harming people, but Billy Bob Thornton down the road, who just has a disdain for certain type of people, but he wants to be left alone. Nobody mess with him. So let that man live his life. Let him be in his house miserable, just from the sight of me. But as long as he is not hurting anybody negatively or disrespecting anybody, then people are going to be like that. That's how I just look at things. I don't know. I think it's very strange.
Yeah.
People say that to me all the time, but I'm just like, I don't know. That's just the way, I don't know. That's the way I feel.
Again, I wonder if that comes from a place of like, that's what I had to do to survive. Like I couldn't fight back with every single person who was racist. And like, in order to survive. Yeah.
And I think like, that's the thing that I guess Black people, they learn as they grow as well. You're not going to be able to fight every single battle. And if you are, you're going to be worn out. You're going to be so thinned out that what's the point of even continuing to do it, especially if you don't have the resources or the help to fight those type of battles. So people say pick and choose your battles, but I mean, there is some truth in that.
Yeah. So, switching gears a little bit, you are in an interracial relationship. Your wife is white. So I'm wondering what that was like for you, what bringing a white person home was like for you. Fill me in.
So it's funny because I always say she's Sicilian instead of white, because I'll be like, she's Sicilian because I mean, they're considered Black Italians because they're closest to Africa. And when I first met her, actually, when I first actually met her and saw her, I didn't actually think she was white. She's like very tan and dark. I actually thought she was like Egyptian. And every time we go somewhere, like out of the country, people are like, oh, what are you? People still don't know that she's just white and Italian. But no, I mean, I fell in love with her in college and I was like, well, I'm not going to let the fact that she's white change that. I mean, I'm at a predominantly white school. Like what else? It's not like what else am I going to find? But I don't even want to say that because that sounds terrible, but it's like, I mean, you're going to find somebody where you're in the environment with. So
yeah,
I mean, we were in college together and I mean, I saw her, I was like, wow, start to know her a little bit. Me bringing her home, I think it was fine. I mean, I dated like white girls in the past. My mom, she's not racist at all. My family isn't racist. I mean, you have certain people who just make comments here and there. But that's society as a whole. I guess on my end, I was more worried about what her family would think of me. So even like my first time going to meet her mom or going to meet her dad, I'm like, do they know I'm Black? She's like, no, like, why would I have to disclose that information? But me looking on it from the outside, I'm like, I know exactly why you need to do that. She was totally confused and didn't understand. But I mean, as we grew in our relationship, she started understanding why that was a question that I had in the past. So it was more of me meeting her family versus me bringing her home per se.
Yeah. I guess the silver lining in that would be like, at least, that like your color skin really didn't matter to her so much so that she didn't even think to tell her parents, because it's so not a factor in who you are.
Yeah. And I also like give credit to her and her whole family, because as I met the family, then I realized why she was, I don't want to say naive, but why she didn't understand that question, because her family is so welcoming. And I mean, even her family is pretty diverse as well. So she wouldn't have to have that question lined up in her head or understand why I would ask that, because to her, it was somewhat of normalcy.
Yeah.
And I give a big kudos to her and her family for that, because there's not a lot of families and people like that.
Yeah. Speaking of, you have a baby due literally any day, don't you?
Yeah, so I was actually gonna start this pod like if I get a call and I have to run out, sorry, because like hope she doesn't go in labor in the middle of this. But yeah, the due date is Saturday.
Oh my
Um
God.
yeah, right now, what is today? Is today Monday, Tuesday?
It's Monday.
Yeah, so she's already dilated, she's already a certain amount of faced. So yeah, she could be popping out anytime soon.
Are you having a girl?
Girl, yep.
What's her name?
We don't have a name yet.
All
She
right,
wants
you'll figure
to,
it out.
yeah, she wants, well, I mean, we have a name, but she has a list of names. So she's like, I want to see her first. I don't know. That's a whole nother story as well. Cause I'm like, we have the name that we want. Just say this is the name. But
Yeah.
I guess we're waiting for her to pop out and then we'll name. So
Yeah. So, I'm curious because I'm at the age where I have friends who are having babies and all of that. And I am so not at the stage of my life where I would want a baby right now. I actually see like people my age with babies and I'm like, damn, I am so happy that that is not me at this point in time. But what is it like for you knowing that you're bringing a child into this like really chaotic world, especially right now? We're hearing like talks of COVID resurging and all of this. So what is this like for you?
yeah. So I mean, not only do I have to bring like a little black girl into the world, but also, like you said, now we have to worry about COVID. And also we're gonna have to set boundaries for people even coming to visit, which could
Mm,
be could be a whole nother problem with people not wanting to be vaccinated or maybe not even wanting to wear masks or follow any of the boundaries or rules that we're going to set trying to have people come in. So that's a thought that's been going through our mind, trying to figure out how we're going to, I guess, communicate that to our loved ones and our friends. But again, me, I'm like, if you don't want to respect it, you don't have to respect it. You just won't meet her. You just
yeah.
won't be around. And I'm me personally, I'm totally okay with just like being upfront about it and cutting people off if they don't want to actually follow those rules or steps. So I think my wife, Emily, she might be a little bit more reserved to that and she might actually care. But yeah, me personally, that's like something that I'm not actually going back and forth on because it's not even about us. It's about the health of the baby. And if you're not willing to connect with us on that, then you're the issue, not us.
Totally. I love that so much.
And then in regards to just bringing her into this world as, I mean, in general, I mean, it's going to be a learning curve. Obviously, I never had a baby before. My wife's never had a baby before. There's no like playbook or blueprint to follow really. And I think that's the whole thing about adulting. And I think that's the reason why we came up with done with adulting, because it's like, when I was younger, I thought parents knew everything and the adults knew everything. And then as I became an adult, I was like, no, people do not know what they were doing. So, yeah, I guess it's going to be a live and a learn process. But one thing that I actually talked with Emily about is making sure that we feel comfortable having our daughter around certain people when we're not around.
Mm.
So, for example, having her around her family, maybe her mom or her dad, if we're not around. I know friends who are in interracial relationships and their significant others have actually been out by themselves. This person will be white with a baby that's dark. And there have been strangers who've come up and said, oh, you've made a terrible decision having a black baby, and just overt racism straight to their face. So I have to be 100% comfortable allowing my baby to be with you when we're not there, because if I'm in that situation, I know how I'm going to react. If my wife's in that situation, I'm pretty confident that I know she's going to react the way that I would want her to. I would want my baby, I would want to have that confidence with my wife's family to make sure that not only does my daughter still feel protected in that situation, but that they're also, I don't want to say getting violent or anything, but they're also giving it back to whoever.
Like they're not taking it. They're like sticking.
They're not taking it.
Yeah.
They're not going to sit there and cry and be emotional about it or feel like they've been attacked. Like, no, you need to be strong. You need to let it be known that that was wrong. And my daughter needs to feel protected with you. And that's something that I think that we're going to not struggle with, but that's something that's going to be in the back of my mind for a while as she gets older and as we start allowing her to be with certain people when we're not around.
What do you think that conversation is going to look like for you with your in-laws? Or is it a conversation that you really will have, or will you kind of just like sweep it under the rug?
I don't know. I'm saying like I'm going to have that conversation and I'll be all tough and mighty about it. But I honestly can see as we get older, that just gets swept under the rug. But I've actually mentioned it on a podcast before. I think she's actually shared that podcast with her mom. So maybe her mom has heard that. But I know for like her sisters and the siblings, I would feel confident with them because I know that they're not going to take that. I know the type of people they are. The parents might be a little bit more reserved, but I could see if they were attacked in that sort of way, that they would respond the way that I would want to. And maybe that's definitely a conversation that's going to need to be had. And as we get older and as the baby gets older, that's something that I'm going to try to push to have. But yeah, hopefully it just doesn't get swept under the rug. Maybe it'll be like, I'll come at it as like a joke or come to them like a what if situation. Like, what would you do if this happened? Or maybe just even bring up the stories of what I've heard in the past and people that actually know.
Yeah.
Just to let them know, because they might actually not think that's possible. There's a ton of people who think that they would never see racism, especially that overtly in their lives, but they just have to be aware that that's something that could possibly happen and they need to be ready to react to it and also hopefully make sure that my daughter feels comfortable enough to be around them.
Yeah, I think that's also the importance of speaking about these things and sharing stories of like blatant racism. I had I don't know if I had told you guys about her podcast. Her name is Latoya. She has a podcast called The Analog Girl, and it's all about like what it's like being Black and having anxiety in your 30s and 40s and stuff like that. She's awesome. I had her on my podcast, but she shared a story about, we actually recorded on the day that George Floyd's like murderers weren't like responsible or
gotcha.
Like, yeah. So it was like already like an emotional and like fucked up day, but she shared a story about how not even that long ago, it was maybe like 30 years ago, her uncle brought his car into the shop and they fucked it up. She's Black. He brought his car into the shop, they fucked it up. So he brought it back and politely was like, hey, it's actually still broken. And he like got lynched, like,
oh, wow,
literally lynched. And I was sharing this story with family members. And then I had another family member call me and be like, hey, like I listened to that podcast and I was sharing that story with my cousins and they don't believe it. And I was like, what? Like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean they don't believe? They're going to choose to not believe this woman's like real story? And like
she's just going to make that up for what?
Yeah. What? Like literally for what? Why?
You have to think about it. And you said like 30 years isn't that long enough. You have to think about it. I mean, what Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, that was not that long ago. We have grandparents and great grandparents who were actually there. And you see all the pictures of just the segregation and even the desegregation of schools. That really was not that long ago.
No.
There's plenty and tons of people who are still living who actually lived through all of that.
Yeah.
So I just understand when people want to say, oh, slavery was 400 something years ago. That was like the worst of it. But like, no, all of this, the civil rights movement was literally around the corner. Not that far, not that long ago.
In addition to this, like the Americans with Disabilities Act was only passed 31 years ago. Like, and including in that was like the LGBTQ community. Like this was not like, we have made such progress, but we also have so much more to go. Like, and
so much.
Like you said, this wasn't so long ago.
Yeah, that's why I'm just always confused when people try to make it seem like it was ages ago. It's like, no, you're not being realistic. You're not being a realist.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I call myself, a realist. Have you heard any of your clients say that before?
No, I haven't.
I don't even know what it means, but
but I'm going to call myself it.
Yeah, a realist. Like I guess you don't go off of emotion. You go off of fact. Whatever decisions you're making are based off of, I guess, fact and, I don't know, being a realist.
That's very much so. My boyfriend, Pat, he only thinks with his logical brain and I only think with my emotional brain. So we're like a great match because I remind him like, hey, people like might get upset about that or like have hurt feelings. And he reminds me like, hey, your emotions don't like rule the world. And also you're not being like super logical at this point in time. But
I do think you need a mix of that.
You do need a mix of it. Wait, something was just my head. Oh, you had mentioned on your podcast that you think Black youth could really use Black men who go to therapy.
For sure. I just think representation matters. So, I mean, growing up in the Black community, I guess therapy was always stigmatized. There was really nobody, like when you hear therapy, you think, oh, this person might be crazy. They need therapy, things like that. I think we're moving in a great direction where people are being open about therapy and the benefits of it. And society is making it normalized and it's not as stigmatized as it once was. So seeing Black men for the Black youth in therapy, instead of locked up like society shows or in the streets or not in the household, I think that would help people who are actually going through things look to get help. And not even Black men, also Black women.
Speaking of Black women, how would you feel if in 10 years your daughter's having a hard time at school or whatever, and she, maybe needed to talk to someone? What would that be like for you?
I'll be like, let's go do it.
Nice.
Let's go do it. Yeah. I mean, we might hit you up. Who knows? Try to find somebody local, maybe. Hopefully by that time we're able to be face to face with people again.
Oh my God, I know.
Could you imagine? But no, I mean, anything that she would want to do, especially to help her out if she's going through tough times, I'm definitely going to be here for it. I'm going to be a supporter of her and hopefully give her everything that she needs to make herself feel comfortable in certain situations, especially if something going on at school. And who knows? I know right now in life, a lot of kids are all on social media. I don't know in the future what the next big thing is going to be. So that might look totally different than what it is now. And I might not be aware of it, but hopefully I will have her feel comfortable enough to share that type of information with me. And then we can go get her any sort of help that she needs.
It seems like you want to do your part in breaking that stigma in your own home. You want to say like, hey, listen, you can talk to me about whatever, you can feel whatever. Just,
of course.
I'm here for you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we touched on this on our episodes before, but like even Asia talking about her family, she said that she feels like there was times when she couldn't have conversations with certain people within her family. And I think that's normal within the Black community. Saying if you do feel depressed or if you are having any sort of mental issues, a lot of Black people would just say, pray on it or go to church and think about it like that. But there's other ways to get help and to get out of a depression or a funk or the help that you need. So being able to talk about it first and foremost with the people closest to you is the most helpful.
Yeah. I always think it's so funny because I hear people all the time say like, you can't manifest like everything, like you actually have to work too. And I'm like, yeah, but the same thing goes for prayers. Like you can't just pray this feeling away. You can't pray your trauma away. Like you have to work through it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. And I mean, even for myself, so back to my dad, I remember when I was younger, he told me not to cry. So maybe that's something that I'm still holding on to, and which is the reason why I really haven't cried or grieved with his loss, because that's one thing that I 100% remember him teaching me was like, boys don't cry, men don't cry, stop crying.
Wow.
So maybe that's something that I'm holding on to.
When was the last time you cried? Do you even remember?
Like boo-hoo cry or just like a little tears dropping?
Like boo-hoo cry. Like I'm letting it rip.
I don't remember the last time I boo-hoo cried.
What about like a tear? Was that like your wedding day?
No. So a tear was when Kobe died.
Okay. Respect.
So for people who don't know me, I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan. Just he was like an idol to me. And a reason why I say that I cried, like a tear dropped for him, but not my actual dad, is because, like I said, I already like embraced that he was going to pass my dad. So I kind of built that up. But Kobe's passing was so just tragic and just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It just took me by surprise. So that emotion came out when I found out that he passed. So yeah, that was the last time. And even we talked about this on the pod as well. Asia was like, I feel like I saw you grieve more when Kobe died than your actual own father. And I was like, I contributed too. Yeah. Because for a long time, I thought my dad was going to die a while ago. So I already went through that process, I guess. But that was the last time I think I dropped a tear.
Yeah, that can be really tough because there is two sides of dying. Like one where it's a slow process, you know it's coming, you're able to prepare yourself. But the unfortunate side of that is that you're also watching this person like clearly in pain. Like it's hard to watch. It's hard to know that they're in such pain. But the other side is just as hard, if not harder or whatever, because you didn't prepare yourself for it. And I'm not a basketball person at all, but I remember like where I was when Kobe died. Like I'd just gotten a massage and I was about to pay and I got like Google alerts about it. And I was like,
Yeah, it was crazy.
I was like, did Kobe Bryant die? Like what? And everyone was like, how crazy. And I was like, wait,
yeah. And then,
what?
And then you had all the stories that were coming out at first, like, oh, his whole family was on plane.
Yeah.
Then like 3 of his daughters were on the plane, but then you come to find out that that was his one daughter and then some of her friends and some of the other players on the team. But yeah, that was just a shocking situation. So yeah, definitely dropped a tear. What so as a therapist, have you ever cried in a session with a client?
I cried one time with a client, and luckily it was when we were in person. Oh, you know what? No, I cried one time when we were in person, so I was able to like hold their hand and be like, I'm here. But I actually teared, not boohoo cry, but I like teared a little bit a couple of weeks ago because I have this one client who the week that I started working at the practice is the week I started seeing them. And I've been with them for almost 2 years now. And I've just watched their life go from one end of the spectrum to another. And they, like you, are bringing a baby into this world. And it's just been like such a blessing. And I sound like a Hallmark card, but it is truly like the biggest honor of my life to be let in on other people's lives and really support them and just be there for them. But it really is such an honor to like watch someone thrive and know
Sure.
that like you played like a very small part in it.
I was going to say, yeah, it must be amazing for you to see just the growth in people and know that you played a part in that.
Yeah. And again, like I want to make it very clear that like the work a client does in therapy is most of the work is done outside of the therapy office, and I cannot make my client do anything. But yeah, like it is a support and an advocate and all of that. So I do feel just so special to like love what I do and that people trust me to, you know, share with me things that they don't share with their wife, with their husband, with their mom, with their kids. So yeah, I could cry now, like thinking about it, being like, wait, I love what I do.
No, and to touch on your point, so after our episode dropped, like I said, there were like I have close family members, close friends who were reaching out to me like, oh yeah, I'm actually in therapy now. And they were just mentioning how I guess it took them a few sessions for them to actually start opening up. So is there any type of advice for people who are in therapy who aren't really the type of people to open up just off the bat? Or is that just depend on, I guess, the therapist and their approach?
No, I think I've definitely had clients that we went like 2 or 3 months before we really like touched on anything super deep. Like some people just need to feel really comfortable at first. And, you know, I think if any therapist is listening, like go with the speed of the client. You know, if they're not comfortable, again, like you can't push someone to do something they don't want to do. So if a client doesn't want to talk about something, they don't want to talk about it. And, you know, you can identify like, hey, I'm aware that we're not talking about this, but I'm not going to pressure you to do it. Like bringing it up without putting the pressure to talk about it is important. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I love that you're like interviewing me on the pod right now. This is great.
Well, I mean, we're both podcasters. I'm usually on the opposite end. Now I'm getting the questions. So I have to shoot them back to you a little bit.
I know. This has been so great though. And I'm wondering like any last words for one, I want to say like, do you have any words of advice for maybe people like me who want to be an ally and help the Black community, but at the same token, don't want to come across as this like white savior and like all of that? Like, how can we best be helpful?
That's a great question, because you do get those folks who are like way too extreme.
Right.
And it seems like it seems genuine, but also seems kind of performative. So I would say just keep learning, keep asking questions, surround yourself with other types of groups that you usually wouldn't. Because that's the only way you're really going to learn. Just being around and interacting with those types of folks. Actually, going back to like being in an interracial relationship, there's been so many different weddings that I've been to that are like friends with my wife, and I'm like the only Black person there. And
Wow.
I just sit back and think like there were like no other Black people in your life that you could invite to your wedding. And the only reason why I'm here is because I'm an extension of her. So
Right.
you really can't even count me. But there's so many people who went to school their whole life without ever actually being a friend or actually deeply interacting with a person of color or even somebody in a different culture. So I would say just put yourself out there and try to build relationships with people who are different than you, and you can learn from them. And also, if you're not in a situation where you can do that, I guess just researching, reading books, even just like watching Black movies, seeing the different culture, things like that. But I think the most important would be trying to actually build those relationships with people who
I
are
love
different
that.
than you.
And for everyone listening, I will link the books that I have personally read to educate myself in the show notes. But off the top of my head, I'm thinking of White Fragility, which I feel like every person read, but also Hood Feminism. Have you ever heard of the book Hood Feminism?
I have not, but I love that name.
Oh my God, it was so good. You got to read.
I might need to check that out.
You do. Tell your wife to read it too. It's awesome.
I know she already has White Fragility. She has a bunch of different books that she reads, but Hood Feminism, I might have to cop that one.
Hood Feminism. You got it. I think I got it on Amazon for like $10.
Yeah.
It's
I gotta
so
check that out. Just the name alone, I'm like, okay, that catches my eye.
So Jared, where can people find your podcast? Can you tell them a little bit about your pod, and where can people find you?
Yes, Done With Adulting podcast. You can listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast. Basically, it's me and Asia. We're talking about adulting in the world right now. We try to bring different guests on who are kind of experts in certain type of fields. So therapy. So we brought Brenna on, real estate agents, financial analysts, just trying to just give like a little, I guess, give some guidance on what to do in a life. And we try to come at it with like a humorous feel. All of our interviews are just conversational. It's not just questions. I think it's just a fun way just to listen and to see how people are just doing this thing called adulting.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely check us out on Instagram, Done With Adulting Pod. We're also on Twitter, Done WTH Adulting. So yeah, just check us out.
Yes. Well, Jared, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. I know that you are so busy. You literally have a baby due in like 5 minutes. But this was so fun.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you. I was definitely nervous about this because I was like, oh, are we going to get into therapy? Am I going to start disclosing information? But no, I appreciate it. I appreciate you giving me the insight on therapy. I'm possibly going to do it sometime. So when I do, I'll let you know how
I'm going to, you know that you just said that on a recording, right?
I know. This
is now I gotta, out there.
Yeah. I got to stand true to that then.
Yep. Now you got to do it. I'm going to play this recording for your baby in a couple years so she can also hold you accountable. This will be great.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.